but I'm going to try to get us started within the next 5 minutes.
How's the sound in there?
Are we going to be able to record, Ariella? Brilliant, thank you.
Who are we missing? We have a decent group here.
Recording in progress.
Should we jump in? Might as well, right?
Good, Matt? Sure. All right.
And Ebony's online. We have folks online. So folks online, well, let's get our meeting started. I'm gonna give a side eye to my colleagues over there with the side talk to start. Well, welcome everybody. Tri-County Planning Body. I'll call the meeting as commenced. As a reminder, Ben Duncan, he and pronouns, your facilitator in this process. I'm going to do some of the logistics for the room, a little bit of logistics for those of you online, and then we'll dive into our review of the agenda. We have a ton to cover today. It's very ambitious. More ambitious perhaps than our last agenda, and that was pretty ambitious. So I'm going to try to move through these sections pretty quickly. So I'm going to start with safety for those of us in the room. Please note that we're on the 3rd floor of the building. In the event of a fire or a fire alarm, we'll ask you to exit through the door in the northeast corner of this room, which I believe that's northeast. Right? Feels right? Okay. That's the only door. I guess there's a door over there too. So you'll leave from the northeast corner of the room, go down the steps to the 2nd floor, exit through the main entrance by the reception desk. And seeing that all of you have your name tags on, you'll go out that door if you remember. And we'll meet in the courtyard outside that entrance. In the event of a medical or fire emergency, we'll ask that you please call 911 and notify staff at the front desk. The nearest defibrillator is mounted on the steps leading from the reception desk down to Grand Avenue. And last, a fire extinguisher is located in the corridor along the side of the dais just behind the wall. For those of us, again, in the room, hopefully you'll remember, mic's on when you're talking by pressing the button in front of you. It's a very difficult to see red light, but you'll know if you don't hear your voice booming like mine, and we'll remind you when you're not talking, please turn it off. For those of you online, if you could stay on mute when not talking, unmute, of course, when you want to. Raise your hand if you want to get in the queue. Ariella will be helping me track folks that want to contribute online, but otherwise stay on mute. And for those of you who are possibly following along on your laptop, please keep your audio on mute the whole time so I don't get feedback. Do we have anybody on the phone? Okay, so if you end up, for those of you online, if you end up on the phone at any point, you can press *9 to raise your hand, *6 to unmute. So let's dive in. Let's do some roll call introductions. I'm going to start with those online. Ebony, are you out there?
I am. I'm sorry, I'm a little under the weather today, but Ebony Brown, she, her, co-chair of Tri-County Planning Body.
Great, thank you. Manta?
Hello, everybody. Monte Knudsen, preferred pronouns are he, him. I'm the executive director over at Bridges to Change, and I'm also home with COVID.
Oh, geez. Y'all are y'all giving me some downers here. Steve, I see you on my screen.
Yeah, Steve Rudman, he, him. My wife has COVID, but that's why I'm not there. I don't have it yet.
All right, well, good luck staying COVID-free. Counselor Lewis?
Christine Lewis, she and her pronouns. I hope my kid was just regular sick and not COVID sick, but I'm at home today as well.
Oh, all right, well, we might have to move away from each other in the room here. Is it Zoe?
Hello, Zoe Copiano, she, her, ella, Community Action, Washington County.
Thank you. Is there anybody, who else is online? Do we have any other people online? Christina?
Thank you. Christina Palacios, she, her pronouns, Unite Oregon.
Okay, and we'll skip to some of the staff. So we got Jesse online.
Yeah, hi everybody. Jesse Adams, Washington County Supportive Housing Services Team Capacity Program Supervisor. She, her.
Who else is online? Vahid? Oh, there you are. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Vahid Brown, he, him pronouns. I'm the Housing Services Manager for Clackamas County.
Okay, anybody else on the Tri-County Planning Body who's online? Can you raise your hand? We only see 6 of you. Okay, let's bring it in the room. Let's start with Nicole.
Hi, everyone. Nicole Larson, she, her pronouns. I am a city liaison at Imago Dei Community and also a licensed clinical social worker.
Thank you. Michael?
Mike Liu, Fubon Shopping Center, and Executive Board Member on Portland Business Alliance.
Thank you. Commissioner Jayapal?
Good evening, everyone. So Sheila Jayapal, she, her pronouns, Multnomah County Commissioner for District 2.
Mercedes?
Mercedes Elizalde, use she and her pronouns. I'm the Director of Advocacy at Latino Network.
Okay, thank you. Matt?
Matt Chapman, I'm the other co-chair and retired executive.
Okay, thank you. Yesenia, I see you on there.
Hello there, everyone. I'm Yesenia Delgado, I use she and her pronouns, and I'm the SHS Manager for Multnomah County.
Thank you. Jess?
Good afternoon, Jess Larson. I use she and her pronouns, and I'm the Supportive Housing Services Program Manager in Washington County.
Okay, did I miss any other Tri-County Planning Body members? I know we have a couple phone numbers. Just want to make sure I didn't miss anybody. Okay, and we're going to come back to Metro staff. Ariella, you want to say who you are? Use yours, yeah.
Hi, everyone. Ariella Dolan, Kearns and West, helping facilitate today.
Great, thanks. So I'm going to walk through our agenda. Again, I'm going to try to be quick so we can keep moving through some pieces. I know we have some requests to testify as well. So we'll move through, as we always do, the January meeting summary. We're going to create space for public comment. And then we're really going to move into a set of conversations that's really been building off the work that we've continually done to continue our momentum. And reminding and remembering that we started our conversation with challenges. We work to identify our areas of focus. We've now moved into a conversation. We've done our prioritization, and now we're moving into a conversation around goals and recommendations. And I want to talk a little bit about the process that we're going to use today, because it's going to be pretty rapid fire. If you all saw the agenda, we're like 20 minutes a topic. We're going to hear some information, and then really start with kind of 2 tracks of discussion. First, we're going to work to walk out of today confirming the goal statement. Right? And hopefully folks had time to kind of sit with and read kind of the overarching goal. And I really want us to kind of walk out of here confirming and that we're in alignment with that goal statement. Then we're really going to have a conversation of the recommendations that you saw in draft form that Metro and county staff work to bring forward for this initial conversation. And I use that language really intentionally, this initial conversation. Today is really a day to hear some of the context from our county jurisdictional partners, to be able to ask questions, to get clarity, to add context, but not to make any decisions around the recommendations today. It is our hope that we're learning, we're digesting, and we'll be able to come back in our next meeting and dive deeper. But today is really a day that you're going to get that first overview, get a sense of kind of where some of the possibilities are. And I don't want to dismiss if you all say something's like, yes, let's go full steam ahead with that. We'll do that, but I don't want to have that expectation, right? So today really is a day that we can digest, we can ask questions, we can clarify. And then that feedback, of course, will be incorporated into further discussion. I want to pause there. Any questions around what we're trying to achieve in today's conversation? Or Liam, anything to add? Okay. And then we'll close today with some conversations on next steps. And largely, other than what I just said, they'll be determined by the conversation we have in the room today. Any questions or comments about the agenda? Okay. So I'm going to pass it to co-chairs so we can approve our January meeting. Matt, do I have you lead that?
Yeah, so do we have I'll move to approve the summary of our last meeting.
So we'll have a motion from the chair. Do we have a second? Second. Thank you. Commissioner Jayapal seconds. Any discussion, amendments, dialogue around the January meeting minutes? Not seeing any online. All those in favor say aye or raise your hands. Or give some indication, thumbs up. Okay. Good job. We'll consider January meeting minutes approved. Look at us, we're just about on time. So we're going to move into public comment. So this is a space that we create at every meeting. We have, hopefully folks were able to see, we did receive some written comments from the Home Together team with Cole Merkel. So here together, what did I say? Home together. You know, it makes a lot more sense intuitively to me to hear together from, I believe, Cole Merkel. So hopefully folks got a chance to read that. It was quite validating in terms of the work that you are doing, being aligned with certainly what you saw. And then we want to welcome, and I know we have Anna here in the room. If you could join us at a microphone, turn on the mic by pressing the button. Introduce yourself, and we'll give you 3 minutes. And then if there's anybody online, we have 2 hands raised. So it looks like Cole, we have you, and then we have a phone number. So what we will do is we will promote you to panelists after Anna has provided her testimony, and we'll go Cole, and then we'll ask whoever's the 503 ending in 916 number. We'll promote you to panelists, come off mute, and we'll give you 3 minutes. So Anna, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Tri-County Planning Body members and co-chairs. My name is Anna Kernitsky, and I'm the Executive Director of Community Warehouse. For over 20 years, Community Warehouse has successfully addressed furniture poverty as the only nonprofit furniture bank in our region. Last year, we received client referrals from 52 agencies in the suppliers pool for supportive housing services and furnished 2,285 homes. Despite the clear need, public housing funding has historically overlooked furnishing the homes. Survey results from our partners conservatively indicated that over 50,000 metro area residents do not have the furniture required to meet their daily needs. We are struggling to keep up with a massive increase in service demand due to rising housing costs and the influx of SHS funds to our partners region-wide. We have an opportunity to correct this historic drought in support for furniture bank services through SHS. We are currently engaged in a contract with Washington County, a pilot project to serve 500 households in the next 6 months. In short, Community Warehouse will provide services and bill the county for a flat fee instead of billing individual agencies. already contracted with the county and reinvest those funds into program improvements. This is an amazing opportunity. We are so grateful to Washington County for allocating funding towards this common sense step that will streamline services and resources for everyone involved. Ultimately, though, Community Warehouse is a regional service. We intend to pursue regional funding rather than negotiating individual contracts with each county for the same service, which is why I'm here today. This partnership would be a game changer. In Chicago, a furniture bank founded in 2018 was serving 500 households annually when they entered into a partnership with All Chicago, a joint collaboration to end homelessness similar to the Joint Office. 2 years later, they are serving over 3,000 households annually, a 500% increase. With regional investment, Community Warehouse could similarly scale to meet regional needs. In terms of a funding allocation that will impact homelessness and housing retention, this is not complicated, it's not controversial, it's common sense, it's cost-effective, and it's responsive to community needs. If we choose to invest in solutions to address our housing crisis but leave out funding for furnishing the homes, we are making a rounding error that will contribute to the consequence of people returning to homelessness due to a continued struggle to feel stabilized in housing. A relatively small regional investment would have a significant impact. I hope to discuss this further with you all, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. And as a point of reminder, I know we don't do immediate deliberation, but surely your testimony will be reflected in the meeting summary, and I'm sure part of the consideration of this body. So thank you for bringing that forward. Yeah, Matt?
Yeah, just real quick. One thing that occurs to me, we've had some really good. Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Liam.
Wait, there it's on.
Okay, thank you. We've had some really good testimony, including this. I'm very familiar with Community Warehouse, and they're just an outstanding organization. I wonder if one of our processes might be, when we get an idea like this, to put it in our little idea bucket, just automatically. And that way it doesn't get lost and such. So if that's agreeable with folk, I would ask that we take that topic and whatever else we've got, and when we're looking at ideas that have been presented to us that we need to prioritize and consider and all that, that it would already be there and it'd be in our database.
Just start talking.
Hello. Matt, I think that's a great idea. We can certainly do that. I think the document, the idea bank is supposed to do that. It's supposed to be a living document that continues to add on any ideas that come forward to the TCPB from members and others. So yeah, the staff can commit to doing that.
Cool, thank you.
So I think that's a commitment, and certainly I think in your position as a co-chair, it'll help remind us, right, to revisit what we've heard and to bring it into the room appropriately. Chair Harrington, can I have you introduce yourself before we open to the next public comment?
I think I was your next public comment. I was that phone number.
Well, you got 3 minutes to introduce yourself.
I joined the meeting before the meeting started, but I was stuck in traffic. So good afternoon, Catherine Harrington, Chair of the 5-member Washington County Board of Commissioners and the Washington County elected rep to this committee. Good to see you all again.
Thank you. And we'll note it for the record that the chair is not introducing public comment, so we will not have a blue card for Chair Harrington. But we do, I believe Cole Merkel is, there you are. Cole, 3 minutes, welcome back.
Thank you so much, Ben, and members of the Tri-County Planning Body. For the record, my name is Cole Merkel. I'm one of the co-directors of the Here Together Coalition, and I use he, him, and his pronouns. I'm speaking today to elevate the letter that we submitted to public comment last week. We've been monitoring your work and appreciate the key areas you've called out in the recommendations that you'll be considering today. Your work and your recommendations affirm what we've long observed, that the experts in our community understand what it will take to solve our homeless crisis. And also that it's crucial that we find opportunities to scale up system capacity and service delivery simultaneously, and that we focus on programs that can be implemented and scaled quickly. To that end, we encourage you to consider adopting a region-wide landlord recruitment program. We believe that this program could be implemented quickly, it could shorten the average lease-up time, it could ease the workload out of housing case managers, and most importantly, it could help people move into housing. We highlight this recommendation as an example of one promising opportunity that could be implemented in the near term, not at the exclusion of other strategies that you've identified, but as one that can be implemented quickly. We also want to appreciate that in line with Here Together's last letter to the Tri-County Planning Body, one of the recommendations you'll be considering today focuses on integrating the Medicaid waiver with SHS. We encourage the counties and Metro staff to seize upon this opportunity to work with the health sector without delay, since work must happen now to be prepared for the January 2024 rollout. It's crucial that service providers are included in these discussions for preparation. And everything we've heard is that all parties understand the importance of coordination and that there's strong alignment and a desire to coordinate. But good intentions alone are not going to get us there. There are many small and large ways that the program offerings and rules need to be aligned, and we believe that only when practitioners at each level, whether it's government, whether it's healthcare, whether it's service providers, sit down together to have those discussions, can we ensure that the nuance is understood and avoid missing out on a game-changing opportunity that's in front of all of us. Finally, I want to note that today the Here Together Coalition released our 2023 roadmap of solutions to accelerate our region's response to homelessness. Signed by 220 organizations, businesses, faith leaders, and community advocates, the roadmap represents action items, many of which are already in process, and creative solutions we believe could be sped up or implemented to make real and visible impact in the lives of our neighbors experiencing homelessness in the coming year. The roadmap includes 4 key areas: expedite moving folks from the streets into housing with creative infrastructure and programming, grow and retain the workforce needed to address our region's crisis at scale, improve efficiency through better coordination and streamlined processes, and ramp up data collection, integration, and reporting. We look forward to working with the TCPB and jurisdictional staff to implement the solutions laid out in the roadmap and help thousands of our neighbors move indoors in the process. Thank you for your work and have a great evening.
Great, thank you, Cole. Do we have anybody else online? And I don't see anybody in the room. So thank you for those that provided public comment. I'm going to transition us to some exciting updates from Metro.
Good afternoon. My name is Liam Frost, Assistant Director for Housing at Metro. I use he, him, his pronouns. It's great to be here. And I just want to acknowledge that the hybrid format is working. I really like all you folks at home, but I'm glad that some of you stayed there and not bringing your colds and COVIDs in. And I hope you all get better soon. On that note, too, I thought that Ebony did a terrific job last time of involving folks who are calling in from home. So we'll make every effort today to do that, too. A few smaller updates, and then we'll move into the agenda. One reminder is, if you can, please respond as early as possible, whether you intend to attend one of these meetings or stay home virtually. It takes a lot of work to prepare for these meetings, and it would be better on our team if you're able to do that as soon as you can. You're probably aware that we currently have 3 vacancies. We still have an elected representative from Clackamas. Our council team is working with the board staff from Clackamas to ensure that we'll have somebody represented from Clackamas by next meeting. James Schroeder, as most of you all know, has been appointed as the director of the Oregon Health Authority and has had to give up his coveted seat here. We're also working to fill that seat by March. And there is also a vacant seat that's been vacant for some time. Again, we are working to fill that seat in March. So all those 3, knock on wood, will be filled by next meeting. We have a very exciting update for you right now. Our staff has actually doubled to support the TCPB in the last 2 weeks. We have Malia Dieters and Abby Ahern across the way there. I'll allow them to introduce themselves in just a second. Malia joins us from Community Action in Washington County. Abby joins us from years and years of work in homelessness and housing services in Clackamas County, and we couldn't be more delighted to have them join us. I guarantee you'll be hearing from them soon, but I'd like for you all to introduce yourselves briefly, and also I'd like for you to introduce yourself too, Valeria.
I can go first.
My name is Malia. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a program assistant with the housing department here at Metro, and I'll be supporting the TCPB. This is my first meeting with you all. It's nice to see you. And yes, I'm coming from Community Action of Washington County, so it's nice to see some of my former coworkers and colleagues here in the room today.
Darn, we lost.
I'm Abby Ahern. I use she, her pronouns. I am joining the Metro team as a housing policy and planning coordinator. Yeah, happy to see all you all. Also some familiar faces.
Oh, there we go. Valeria McWilliams, she, her. You already know me. I've been staffing the TCPB for a bit, and I'm just really excited to get more capacity housing planning and policy coordinator for the TCPB. Happy to be here.
That's how I feel every time I come to MRC. So moving into the agenda, I kind of want to frame up some of the work that we're going to be doing today and then hand it back over to Ben and my colleagues at the counties to walk through some of these pieces together. So I just want to remind everybody that you all engaged in an exercise in the last meeting with that DOT exercise, and we identified together 4 areas of priority after much consideration over the last few months and different methods. So since that meeting, Metro and county staff got to work organizing, arranging, and translating your priorities into a path forward towards implementation. We shared all that with you in a meeting packet in one memo, and today we'll have slides that will be a little more simple and easier to walk through and to guide us. A few things to note. Each priority area represents a very different kind of complexity from each other, and so the way we talk about them and how we address them are just going to look different. They won't be apples to apples, so as we move to each one, please kind of reconfigure your brains and engage differently if you can. I know you can. 2, in the last meeting and from the previous survey, as I said, we identified 4 priorities. But we believe in that first one, there were nestled 2. And so we separated them out. So we've got 5 top priorities. And to remind you, the first priority was staff recruitment and retention through training and pay equity. So we've cleaved them off separately to address training separately from wage equity, as you'll see today. Third, you'll recall that this committee requested more information on existing efforts to address landlord recruitment and retention. I believe that was in December's meeting. We sent to you all in the meeting packet a memo on the information that we have gathered thus far. We will continue to gather more information, but from the information we gathered, we looked at outside jurisdictions from what they were doing. Valeria and I interviewed 2 organizations in particular, but we also worked with the county staff to better understand what the counties are doing right now with SHS funding independently to accelerate some of that recruitment and retention work. And that's also included in the memo. The point I'm trying to make here, though, is that we are factoring that memo into this priority area 3. So just for consistency's sake, to avoid any confusion, we're not going to address that separately. That memo that we were assigned to deal with is going to support that goal 3 or priority area 3. And then lastly, that's right, thank you very much. The slides are going to be structured like so. You're going to have a challenge associated with each priority area. You're going to have a goal associated with each priority area, and then staff recommendations. What I would like for you to do today as you're moving through these slides and looking at that goal language is consider that goal language, whether it aligns with what you've discussed so far at the Tri-County Planning Body, and Ben will facilitate that discussion. But what we would like to do at Metro and Metro staff with county staff is begin developing elements for the regional plan that we're on the hook for by the ballot measure and the TCPB charter. So what I would like you to do today as we're moving through and looking at those goals is understand that we would like to get started on that work after this meeting, start drafting the first elements of that regional plan represented by each of these 5 goals. Okay, one thing to, Chair Harrington.
Just to make sure I'm on the journey with
Is your
you,
mic on?
I'm looking at the memo.
Chair, can you make sure your mic is on?
It is.
Is it?
I hear myself.
Oh, well, I didn't.
I hear you, Chair.
All right, sorry.
Can everybody in Zoom land hear me? Terrific. Thanks
And
for
he's
the
nodding.
thumbs up. I'm following along with the memo subject line ranked concepts and staff recommendations, right?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. I'm right where you want me to be. Thanks.
Confirmed. And just a quick reminder to my colleagues who will take turns today in presenting some of these slides. If we can keep it to maybe maximum of 5 minutes upfront presentation, so we leave as much time as possible for dialogue. And I'm out.
Well, we got Commissioner Jayapal, and right before you go, good modeling, because I was just going to name, as we get into discussion, we'll continue our practice of using your name tent as a hand up. Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Ben. Just one question. So in terms of what we had talked about last time, we also talked about system mapping and about Metro coming back with recommendations about that. So I didn't see it in the package, so I'm curious about what's happening with that.
It's subtly woven into some of those staff recommendations you'll see later on today. For example, I believe the priority area around coordinated entry is going to require mapping of the coordinated entry system. So what we want to do is apply a mapping methodology for each of the systems that require it before we provide any kind of tactical response to that.
So what I might offer, Commissioner, and I think for others that kind of agreed on that, as you're listening to, as you described, a subtle inclusion, it's named, I think, in some ways, but if we're missing both the spirit and intent of that recommendation, let's make sure we don't lose it. Other questions before we get started? More to add?
That's it. I think Washington County's up. Oh, thank you. Sorry, Valeria.
Yeah, so we're gonna start, as Liam said, with the two pieces for priority number one, but is it, who's gonna lead us off? Is it Vahid? I don't see Vahid.
I'm here. I thought that Washington County.
Yeah,
was gonna-
Washington County's doing training, yes, right.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Well, hi all, I'm Jesse Adams. I'm going to take this first challenge and goal with you all. Can everyone hear me? Okay, am I talking?
We can hear you,
enough?
and now we can see you. Thank you.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, so as Liam described, here's the challenge and the goal. So this is around training and technical assistance and support for increasing the capacity of our homeless response system. So with the SHS funding, we're working on increasing the capacity of programs that already existed, as well as bringing other partners on that might not have done work like this before, right? Increasing the capacity of community-based and culturally specific organizations to do this important and tough work. So we're in year 2 of this SHS ramp up, and people are still hiring up. It's been, I think, difficult across the region to hire staff. I don't think that is news to anybody in the room. And there's also, of course, a fairly high level of turnover in this kind of work in general. So we're dealing with those two issues. We're trying to increase capacity and then replace people as well. So that being said, we're also dealing with a fairly green workforce then. So we're hiring all of these new people, and a lot of them are coming to the world of housing for the first time, since we have all of this wonderful capacity and money, right? We're building a new system and we're bringing people on board who haven't done this work before. So that means we need kind of training from scratch, training on how to do motivational interviewing, how to provide trauma-informed services, how to talk to landlords, how to write reasonable accommodations when people move in to apartments, or even at the beginning to pass and get over screening barriers. So really we're talking about base level training that everybody needs to be able to do this work, how to utilize HMIS and our coordinated entry systems, all of that. And we all need to do that same training, right? Like this is all work that we're doing across the region, and our partners also work across the region, right? So it's nice to have the same base level of experience for our partners who are dealing with counties that are all providing this same service, that they have the same experience, landlords who are working in Multnomah County, Washington County, Clackamas County, that they have the same experience with all of our staff as well. So it would save us a large amount of time and capacity if we could all provide those similar trainings in a regionalized way, that we all don't have to take the time and effort that it takes to staff up all of these individual programs, that they can get them all the trainings in one place. So that would be a really good regionalized coordination that we could do to get the service providers access to the knowledge and skills that they're required to do this work in an efficient way. So we've been working with learning software in Washington County called Power DMS as a kind of a first step in this direction for us in Washington County. And it's been really promising so far. We have all of our HMIS training, all of our invoice training for finance in there as our first couple of steps. And it's just a system where everybody can access documents, videos, where we can host, Zoom meetings and recordings after the fact. So all of the information is in one place for anybody who has any questions on any policies or procedures or things like even, farther along the process as people get into their programs that assist trainings on how to navigate, the suicide risk in a shelter. Really, it's a system-wide effort to host all of the trainings in one spot. So that's just a little bit about what we've got going so far, but really, the challenge is to provide support and guidance in a regionalized way, since this is something that we are all dealing with on a daily basis. And just so we develop a strong foundation moving forward to hopefully last, for decades as we all continue to do this work.
Good. So you saw there was 2 slides, challenge and goal, as you heard from Jesse, and then we have the staff recommendation on the screen now, the create and support a regional training institute that supports universal technical assistance and training needs. So I want to open it up. And again, as a reminder, there's kind of 2 parts of this process that we want to accomplish today. One is just creating some space for questions, comments, reflections on what Jesse just provided. And then I wanted to ask us if we are any edits or modifications to the goal, or do we agree on goal language? But Matt, I see your tent up, please.
Yeah, so first off, let's see, let me move that away a little bit. First off, I think the goal is particularly well phrased, totally and completely support that. And I think this is one of the very, very great opportunities for regional success. I would edit the actual recommendation, and I provided some verbiage to Ben and the Metro folk prior to this meeting. I think that what we, I don't think we need to create a new institute. There are facilities, work systems, and the community colleges that I think we should involve in this process because they are already in the business of training many of the kind of skills that are going to be needed for the frontline workers and others in this area. And they've got the facilities, they've got the capabilities for online, they know how to develop curricula, and on and on. I think it would be more expeditious if we partnered with somebody. Now, the entity that Jess referenced may also be a great partner. I don't know of them, but I think this is something where we don't want to create a new entity. I would highly recommend us to build on what's there. I've had a lot of experience working with Portland Community College in particular. When I was running NWA, we used them to do our management training. It was a tremendous success. Also, as a board member of Microchip Technologies, which has a plant out in Gresham, we train high school kids in basic engineering kinds of things so that they can come to work for us. We pay for that, but it's handled by a combo of PCC and Mount Hood Community College. These entities are really, really good at this sort of stuff, and I would encourage us to take advantage of that. And I did have an opportunity to talk with Dr. Bennings from Portland State, who's amazingly impressive and was at the State of the Union last night. That was kind of cool. And she is very open to this kind of partnering, as I'm sure the other community colleges and work systems would be as well. So won't go through the verbiage. I don't think that's our goal today, but I would encourage us to look at it from that perspective.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. That's a wonderful example of the type of kind of discovery, input, and conversation that we hope to learn from today without trying to get to a solution on the recommendations. Let's go Mercedes and then Jess.
Thank you. I will actually say I'm a little bit confused by the language in the goal by emphasizing organizational infrastructure. To me, that speaks to contracts, negotiating developing budgets, program design, HR, and a lot of the examples that were given about the training that's needed is actually service delivery training. So I think I would like some clarity on which of those things we're focusing on and make sure we're using language that aligns there. I will say I think that there is definitely value in organizational infrastructure. I think that's honestly, though, more a function of the apprehension our government partners have with paying for admin and paying for HR and paying for people to be on staff to do contracts and things like that, which is not necessarily, so it's a dual thing where like, as a funder, the funder needs to be comfortable with giving space in their contracts for organizations to build out that infrastructure, not just training to tell those organizations to do that, right? Because like they can get all the training in the world on how to have a good HR system, and if they never have enough funds to actually develop one, they're not going to have one. And I was trying to go back in the notes and try to see if there was more detail about whether or not when we were talking about technical assistance, if we were talking about organizational infrastructure or if we were talking about provider expertise and like provider training like the HMIS and things like that were mentioned. And I couldn't find it. So maybe we're talking about both or maybe one or the other. I'm not sure.
Well, so maybe let me ask a follow-up question. So are you just asking for clarity, or are you saying we should include both?
I think there is an argument to be made for both, but I would like to be honest to like where that recommendation came from and how it ended up on the list and follow that kind of through to its through end.
Yeah.
But I'll always advocate for more admin support for organizations.
So let's go back. Jesse, do you want to kind of talk? And Jess, were you going to add? Yeah, so let's go Jesse, and then Jess, if you want to add to some of that response, and then we'll come to Commissioner Jayapal.
I think Jess was before me if she wanted to jump in.
Oh.
No?
Well, one of you, you're both from Washington County, so how about one of you can try to respond to the intent of the language around organizational functionality, and then we can kind of follow up on what Mercedes' comments was.
I just want to say that I think that was, I probably created the misunderstanding there by just focusing, yes, more on the service kind of aspects of the training, but I think the intent is, yes, to provide that organizational capacity as well. Because again, there are organizations coming on board who have never had, government contracts before and do need help with that invoicing and, grant writing and, procurement knowledge. All of those things need to be built up as well. I know that we're working on some capacity building grants to help with just exactly those things in Washington County. So I think both needs are there, and I just want to apologize that I did not highlight that in what I was saying, but I think the intent is.
Well, that's the exact reason why we want these type of questions, so we can get clarity on that goal language and get alignment. So let's go Jess, then Commissioner Jayapal, then Manta.
Yeah, thank you, Jesse. That was great clarification. We're using it both for the skills of the different service programs that are provided, but also the organizational needs and technical assistance. To Matt's earlier question, I think when we're thinking institute, we're meaning more of a system of coordination for training resources to support our organizational partners. So Power DMS is really just an online platform accessible for multiple different users for multiple different functions. And so if, in fact, we have Work Systems as a partner who has provided trainings and we've uploaded them into our Power DMS Institute, if you will, so that when new providers hire up someone who's going to join a program and need to get trained on a specific work systems training that they've offered, they can just automatically enroll in that class without having to wait for it to come around next quarter or something like that. So it's a tool designed to provide really maximally accessible training for providers anywhere in the region working on any part of the puzzle of the system we're building.
Okay,
So
thank
that's
you.
helpful.
So let's keep so I have Commissioner Jayapal, Manta, and then Nicole.
Thanks, Ben.
then
I
Matt.
really appreciate the conversation. I think both are clearly needs. I'll just add in that when we had our conversation last month, I was focusing on training for workforce. And I think that was because what I remember of the conversation was it came out of the workforce strain that all of our systems are feeling right now, and because it was part of a statement about wages. And so I I put those two things together. And I think they're both really important. I think all counties are working on aspects of both. But to Mercedes' points, they are so different that kind of separating them out in terms of where we go from here and the pathway for each one seems important.
Yeah, thank you. Nicole? Or no, Monta, sorry. Monta.
That's right. I just wanted to agree with Mercedes as well. I think from what I remember, both conversations were at play, but there was a very specific need, especially from the new provider or small provider standpoint, to get the technical support that we need them to have to execute what is being asked of them. And so I think the training side and the technical support side administratively for organizations are two totally different things, and definitely are going to have two different approaches, but they were both in the conversation.
Yeah, thank you, Monta. Nicole?
Yeah, I was going to comment among similar lines there as somebody who's been a direct service provider but had to go to graduate school and get a license and all kinds of things in order to do motivational interviewing and have trauma-informed care. I'm curious how the trainings would be organized if they're at kind of different classes for different roles that people will be providing when it comes to direct services. 'Cause certainly some things are necessary if you're in a milieu or if you're in a shelter to have a basic understanding, but I'm curious who will be providing those trainings. Will they all be online? Or will there be any trainings that would be available in person that would be interactive where people can ask questions? Because I think that trauma-informed care is complex, as we all know, and would require ongoing opportunities for training if it's all going to be through this institute. And how would organizations participate? Is that mandatory or is it optional if they want to utilize that as their training format?
I love it, because this is exactly why we've kind of structured it in the way we have, where we're going to be uncovering some of the challenges that we don't have to answer today, but we're uncovering and shining a light on. So I think you're making a lot of points, Nicole, that is why we're not going to try to adopt something today, but really inform future discussions. So I have Matt and then Vahid, and then I'm going to ask us to come back to the goal language so we can try to move through this piece. So let's go Matt, then Vahid.
Sure. I'll be real quick because I think the conversations that we've just had, the comments, illustrate what is my biggest concern in terms of how we would implement the goal. Because you have different organizations at different service provider organizations at different stages, sizes, experience. You've got different workers who have different areas there. You've got different topics, as Mercedes comments and others have illustrated. In order to coordinate all of that, there needs to be an educational overlay. That's what I'm referring to with community colleges. Work systems can do a lot of this, but somebody's got to be able to sit down with the service providers and with the workers and be in a position to apply educational pedagogy in order to see to it that the right training occurs in the right sequence for the right people for the right jobs. Right. That is not an easy task. I've been involved in a lot of that. It is far harder, and I believe that the community colleges in particular are gifted at that. So that's what I was trying to get at, and would encourage consideration along those lines.
Thank you, Matt. Let's go to Vahid. You're making the point, right? This is complex, and I think that was part of what we were going to prove today. Vahid?
No, I was just going to expand a little bit on something that Jess said, and just to point out that the way this goal and recommendation is structured is really to point to what is an element here that's susceptible to regionalization, right? So each of the counties with our various providers, our contract with providers, and Jesse mentioned there's a lot of turnover, a lot of green caseworkers. We're all providing support and training in our own counties and in different ways to our providers, and often for the same skill sets, right? And to provide training on the same activities associated with, for example, finding and renting a unit on the private market, and applying for a reasonable accommodation in the event of a denial, et cetera. And those are things that we're doing multiply. We're doing it in 3 different places with different meetings And so there's a loss of efficiency that we might regionalize here by just identifying what are those elements that could be incorporated into an institute that could be deployed through a shared platform that we could then verify that there's a shared expertise or a shared minimum expertise across our service provider network. And then some of our agencies that work in multiple counties, we all know that we're sharing a common language and a common, expertise.
Yeah, thank you, Vahid. And so I'm gonna stop us here for a moment, because I think you're just illustrating the complexity of this conversation, right? And I think what you just said, Vahid, around kind of the spectrum from shared minimum expertise that's required to kind of do the job as someone coming into this work, and Nicole, this other end of the spectrum, graduate level study, right? That gives you the type of skills and expertise to do some of the practice elements that are really critical. So hopefully we can just sit with the idea that this is complex. There's a lot of conversation that's necessary. There's some ideas that are already rolling out and emerging on the table. I do want to bring us back, though, to the goal statement, because what I heard is a couple things, and maybe I'll offer an amendment and see kind of where folks land, and then we can do our modified consensus. So I think going back to where Mercedes kind of started us in that, if we were to amend to talk about, and this doesn't have to be exact language, but I want us to agree conceptually that we would amend to include service and organizational functionality. And I think to your point, Commissioner, and others, recognizing that the recommendations then will have to look different because they're unique. They have unique attributes. What it means to build organizational functionality and what it means to build service functionality are not the same thing, right? But the goal statement could include both. So that's my proposal based on what I just heard. Does that alleviate, Mercedes, I'm going to look to you first, and then I'm going to look to you, Commissioner, because I think you really laid it out as being two really distinct things. Is there a way to combine by adding service and organizational functionality, recognizing that the strategies or the recommendations, the tactics that come out of that are going to have to look different based on those needs? Does one universal goal statement get us both things? So I'm going to start with you, Mercedes, then Commissioner, I'd love to hear your thoughts too.
I do think we can have them both as part of the same goal and recognize that there's different pathways there. Yeah, I think I'd be comfortable with that. But yeah, I'd love to hear your
Comfortable with it. Comfortable with it's a good start. Commissioner, please.
I'm going to sound very lawyerly, and I feel like we could do it with a goal statement and then an A and a B. And the goal statement talks about overall functionality, functionality is not quite the right word, but optimizing something like that. But then I would still suggest breaking it out, and the devil's probably in the details of the language, whoever gets to do the drafting.
Other comments? So we have a level of comfort with applying both, and then a more broken out, right? That really focuses on the outcome or the goal being functionality, right? To meet the needs of our populations, and recognizing that functionality needs to then be kind of subsections of service and organizational function. Chair, please.
So I don't care for the amendment language that I heard. I leaned over to Jess about it, and she offered clearer language, in my opinion, to what we're actually trying to achieve.
Well, that puts you on the spot then, Jess.
Because otherwise, to me, it sounded like we were teaching service providers how to become service providers, as opposed to be successful with in achieving the contracts that they engage with on us. So anyway.
Yeah, so Jess, give us your language.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm not sure that I was only intending to describe what I heard as the edit, which was the addition of service and organizational functionality.
That's what I think I said out loud, so I just want to make sure that.
Say, level of organization,
Yeah, I think it's just
functionality.
level of service.
And organizational. So I
Oh.
think what we're trying to address,
So
Chair.
added 2 words.
Yeah,
Okay,
what we're
I
trying to
heard
do is
your whole
address
thing.
the distinction and importance of recognizing that the reflect, I don't know where that's coming from. Is that me? It might be, are you, is that thing too close? What I'm trying to reflect, right, is that the conversation that said, like, what we heard as part of the challenge was those who are doing provider work having some minimum level of expertise, right? And being able to standardize that because that's already happening as part of the onboarding and training of staff that are coming into this work. I think we also recognize that there was an organizational function, right? That administrative capacity to be able to do the work as contracted organizations. So I guess I want to, and maybe we can play with it, with the suggestion from Commissioner Jayapal. Do folks come to agreement? I guess with a thumbs up, I'm okay with the concept that functionality needs to be both service-based and organizationally based, and that we work with the language to try to structure it in a way that makes clear that the tactics or strategies or approaches are going to have to be unique to those different parts of the equation. I see the thumbs up, thumbs up. Is there any thumbs? We're going to do thumbs up means I'm good to go. Thumbs sideways, I'm willing to go along. Thumbs down means no way. Thumbs up. Is there any thumbs down? I'm not seeing any. So with those amendments captured, and we'll take the notes and we'll come back to this to make sure that folks see the final version and we all feel good about it, but it gives Metro some direction going forward. Folks good? All right. That was part 1. It took us a little longer. Liam?
I just want to say, we see you online, people, just to let you know, you're part of the crew.
We see them. I don't know if they know that we see them, but you just told them. Okay, so Vahid, I think I'm passing it to you. We just practiced, so we want to replicate that same thing. Good questions, challenges. Let's explore and unpack some of the things that we know could get in the way of doing it right, but trying to land on some goal language we feel okay with. Vahid, please.
I was going to share slides on this one, but second issue.
Sorry,
Yeah.
Vahid, the slides are up. Am I not showing? 1 second. Let me reshare my screen.
Well, you can start talking, Vahid, and
Yeah.
we'll get the slides up.
Okay. Yeah, this one I don't think needs a lot of contextualization. We did talk about this a couple of times in previous meetings related to the first issue of, our challenge to have adequate capacity across this sector to provide housing services is employee recruitment and retention, and related to that is compensation. So this is about that kind of pay equity area of interest that the planning body has identified. Obviously, as you know, housing the people is hard work. It's stressful. It's folks that are doing this work are exposed to trauma, people in crisis who are suffering. Our programs focus on very vulnerable people, population A. And so this is not mowing the lawn or, clocking in and clocking out. We're asking a lot of the people that are doing this work. We're in an area where you can get a job at a fulfillment center in Troutdale at $26 an hour, and that's a job you can clock out from and go home. So we do have a challenge that is not easily resolved county by county. Some of our organizations work across counties. Many of them are very large, and their compensation standards are kind of controlled by classification and compensation departments within their human resources departments. Some of them are tiny, with just a few people, a small grassroots nonprofit. So this is not an easy one for us to solve in a local context, and so we're looking for the planning body to sort of lift this up and take a regional approach. So the challenge is quite simple, that we have providers that are struggling to hire enough workforce to deliver a rapidly expanding suite of services and programs. Like I said, we're asking a lot of folks that are coming in to do this work. It's traumatic work, and it's when you compare the fulfillment center at Amazon, is it worth all of the heartache? So we're looking for, the goal here is fair and equitable pay for folks that are doing the work in SHS funded services throughout the region. And the recommendation is to map current wage conditions and draft a housing worker wage framework that provides guidance to SHS-funded agencies and providers. The framework may include differential pay for lived experience, bilingual employees, and culturally specific organizations.
Thank you, Vahid. So I'm going to switch up the order because I think there's going to be a lot of conversation about the recommendation. But I want to ask us, and well, let me start if there's any clarifying questions around what you just heard from Vahid. And then I'm going to ask us to start with the goal. Because I actually think when we get into the recommendation, there's a lot of conversation that's going to emerge. But I want to make sure that what you basically heard, does the goal and the challenge align with each other? I think Chair, you were first, and then Mike. Or Mike, please.
So whenever pay comes up as a topic for things, I always try to look to see what are the other surrounding things that are driving the amount of people to apply for certain jobs or situations. So if pay was $3,000 an hour, do we like, what does the population pool of people who are qualified enough to get these jobs, what does the pool go from? Like, does it go from like 500 people to 10,000 people? We need to see what some of the other drivers are. Is it a situation where some of the requirements are too high? People are not getting enough credit for lived experience, or people are not getting credit for other things that makes the bottleneck or the issue of getting us to the amount of employees we need to service our problem. That, for me, that's more the underlying thing. Like, I think pay, yes, everyone needs to be paid equitably for the work they're doing, but there's some other factor that's causing the pool of applicants not to be there for the job. And those are the things that, if we're trying to scale this and truly scale it, we need to hit those topics. If we don't, this is just gonna be an ongoing thing every year of like, it's not just pay, I guess is pay and something else. And we gotta figure out what that something else is to get us to the scale we need to get to.
Yeah, so maybe I'll put this back, and Vahid, I'll start with you, but I'd offer it to the other county folks and other folks in the room that might have some sense, because I think Mike's question makes a lot of sense. How do we know? Right, so I think we have focused a lot on wages. We've heard of that. The challenge also included the kind of trauma and vicarious trauma that comes with doing this very difficult work. So how do you know? Like, if we're under the banner of recruitment and retention, and Mike laid out some other potential things, is it qualifications? Are there barriers to actually getting hired? How do you know that wages help to solve this problem?
Well, I mean, an implementer in Clackamas County, engaged in all the contract negotiations with all of our providers. I mean, this is something that I hear, and I'm asking our providers, what are your challenges with respect to hiring up? And absolutely, pay is part of it. I think that the previous issue is another part of it, right? Adequate support and training, so that folks step into this work feeling confident and feeling like they have the skills and knowledge to do the job effectively. And this is not easy work. It may seem straightforward and simple from the outside, but there's a lot of complex skill sets and soft skills that are required to be good at this work, to be good at case management and housing work. And it's intimidating in some cases to take on this role. So I know that pay is part of it because that's what the providers are telling you, and I'm asking them, it's taking you 4 months to hire up the caseworker that your contract requires for you to deliver the service. Why is that? That's a part of it, right? There's also like variable conditions. So I hear that some agencies say, well, so-and-so went somewhere else because that agency guaranteed fully remote work, right? And so there's the conditions of work and their context that might be implicated here. But absolutely, if all of our providers are going to be able to expand at once, we can't just have one agency that has the ability to offer competitive wages being the only one able to expand. All of the boats have to rise together. And if there's a large agency that's offering $19 an hour to peer services and one that's 26, those two boats are not going to rise at the same time. And that's the challenge, and that's what we mean by equitable pay.
Yeah, thank you, Vahid. So, Chris, all right, let's figure out an order. Chair, you had your hand up, then I think Nicole, then Christina. Although, yes, so let's go Chair, and then I know there's probably some folks that want to answer this question too. And then Steve, I see you as well. So Chair, please.
This work is absolutely imperative. It's part of the measure. It's part of what the SHS Oversight Committee has been discussing. They ensured that this fair and equitable wages and also cross-cultural support is provided. It's there in all three county local implementation strategies. What our regional subject matter experts have brought forward is that we share that problem across all three of our counties, and this is a shared regional barrier to success. So on the memo, I crossed out the word support pay compensation for contractors since to cross out support ensure pay compensation for contractors as culturally specific services are often contracted out. And that with our goal, there's a missing word that I think is vital there, and that is ensure fair and equitable pay, blah, 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 blah. That is an absolute goal of this program. Whereas training, the prior goal, is something we need to do in order to be successful with the workforce. This goal of the pay and lifting up wages for these workers that have been undervalued and undersupported for years must be addressed. My only question, right aside from these wordsmithing points that I've just made, is what else do we need to do to ensure that these valuable and valued employees will be following these careers for more than 2 years?
Yeah.
So after we've paid them, they've been doing this work, we've been training them to do it better. What more in that recommended set of actions might we need? And I don't know the answer right now. I'm just hoping that the team in doing this work feels empowered to have that sight line.
That's right, and recognize we might not solve all of the problems with recruitment and retention, but let's keep going around. I think I got Nicole, Christina, Commissioner, Steve, Manta. Let's go on that.
I just wanted to speak from personal experience. When I first took a role as a clinical case manager in 2005, I had a master's degree and was paid $15 an hour. And that's not uncommon. So you're working over full time, you're working nights, you're working weekends with a population of people who have extreme trauma. They need a lot of support in kind of every area, and you're also managing a space where there's a constant influx of crisis management, of being threatened, to safety planning from someone being murdered. I mean, on and on and on. It was having a caseload that was extremely high because there wasn't enough funding to hire enough employees to be able to do the job, and a number of people burnt out. You could see the turnover happening, people who were so traumatized by doing the work that they never returned to the field. I really do believe that compensation is a big part of this. Because if people are well compensated, they feel valued, they feel seen, and their needs are met. They're not barely living above the poverty line themselves. On top of that, you're going to have higher quality in terms of service provision if people are paid more, because over time, if they have that experience, they're going to want to move to a place where they're better taken care of. You know, I recently was talking to a group of executive directors and nonprofit leaders, and one was saying, you know, they lost a number of their employees to another service provider agency who put out some job requests but had, you know, higher pay truly by maybe $5 an hour more. They had a group of employees quit. You know, I had another agency that I was talking to where their entire overnight staff quit on one day. I mean, people are really, I think, stressed in these roles, and so having adequate care, adequate compensation will help with retention as well as quality of service provision.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm curious, quick question though on this, so that I'm understanding, are we making a recommendation that money from this also goes directly to service providers to pay them more? Or is it a structure of recommendations that organizations would then pay according to that structure?
Let's answer that question in a little bit. Is that okay?
Okay.
Is that okay?
Sure, yeah.
Or we'll come back to that question. Let's go
Okay.
Christina. I don't see Christina.
Yeah, I'm here.
There you are.
I have many thoughts on this topic. Some of the suggestions that I'm gonna give for retention is flexibility, live experience to be counted. When putting out applications, I do see a lot of applications trying to attract BIPOC community, but they put like a degree on blah, 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 universities degrees and 5 years of experience. And it's like, we live problems every day and we've been helping our community every day to survive. Like, you should not make that as a condition. Another thing is to think about benefits. Benefits are not attractive. Like many nonprofits, they cannot afford to pay, do 401ks and all the great things that you do get. Is what I heard. I never had a job that with the city or the county and I heard they had great retirement benefits and so many things that nonprofits cannot afford. So that's something I think that should be looked out very closely, how you're supporting the nonprofits to give them more money so they can pay more and bring all those benefits to retain people. Other things is relationship building. When there are interviews happening in many sectors like housing, you don't see a lot of BIPOC people, and I think there is a big gap on how recruitment happens for bilingual, not only bilingual, but also like any Native Americans, African Americans, all BIPOC people, people from rural communities. We need to make sure like we're doing the intentional outreach for long-term sustainability. The applications are very intimidated. I see applications that are like 2 pages long with all the things that I told you, and I'm almost done here. Other things that to keep in mind is wellness programs and trauma-informed trainings and support for staff. And the last thing that I want to add is also think about the global competition that we currently have. Like I see, like I don't know, if I call my bank, somebody answers from Mexico or Nicaragua, and I'm not saying that's wrong. What I'm saying is there is money that are being saved by using cheaper labor. So you're not investing in the communities here. That's why I believe it's a big problem of having unhoused people, because you pay like, I don't know, 5 times less if you hire somebody like a customer service or somebody out of state or in other country, when you can be locally supporting BIPOC community members to try where they are. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go Commissioner, then Steve, then Monta.
Is it on? Yeah. Thanks, Ben. I think people have said kind of provided lots of good reasons why wages are incredibly important. And that's not to say that there aren't other things. And I think Christina actually mentioned one, which is application processes. And so as part of sort of a capacity building effort, we could look at application processes. But wages, I think the one other piece I wanted to add about wages is one of the very concrete pieces of evidence we have is the hourly wage that it takes to afford to live in our region. And so if we're not paying an hourly wage that allows people to live in the region, I think that's a really clear indicator that wages are a problem. So just wanted to throw that into the mix.
Yeah, thank you for that point. Let's go Steve, Monta, Mercedes.
Yeah, a good conversation that kind of shows that any one of these issues, you can peel it down to a lot of layers, takes a whole meeting. But this is a critical issue. And one of the things that the SHS provides once and for all is that line service workers, people on the streets doing the work, could actually be paid a livable wage because the resources are there. I think it's not as simple as saying is because the counties also have many existing contracts and they pay something for those jobs. And if this should pay, all the jobs should be raised up into a higher level of pay, but there's funding to do that for SHS that probably isn't, or it's more difficult to find funding across the counties. But that's the issue. Many of these agencies work in more than one contract. And so it's important that we as a society recognize how important this work is. SHS, by being dedicated, there's no excuse that SHS workers should be paid anything under whatever is determined to be a cost that a family can thrive on, because the money is there. The problems are going to be when you talk about other county contracts, et cetera. But this work's very important.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. Let's go Monta and then Mercedes. And then I'm going to propose an approach that might help us move forward. Monta?
Yep, thank you. And thank you for bringing up the cost of living, Commissioner Jayapal, which is super important if our staff can't afford to live in the regions that they're working in. That's problematic. As a provider who I carry about $50 million in contracts in 4 counties, multiple divisions of the county, 4 counties in the state of Oregon. And I think one of the things that's missed in the conversation around wages is what is our full compensation that we're paying our employees. So we're thinking about healthcare. What does the other fringe look like? And people don't often think about, even the folks that are working at a direct service level, they're looking at healthcare. They have families, they have kids, right? And so organizations that might have a better full healthcare package is going to be a lot more attractive, even if it's, $1 less an hour. Right now, we have folks that are leaving organizations, chasing 50 cents, chasing the $1.50, chasing better medical care, which is, a huge attraction. And so my suggestion into this is that when we're looking at how funders across the region are paying contractors like myself, it's like, are they looking at the full comp, right? What are these workers getting for the cost of an FTE? If it's 90,000 an FTE, whatever the number is. So we need to look at full comp. We need to make sure that we're providing the benefits that go along with reasonable wages that nonprofits have just been way behind compared to government, state, and private sector. So we need to get on parity with all those other places if we're going to keep the workforce. Whole other issue with getting enough folks to come to work. I think that's a separate issue, but money talks, and it's a big issue. So thank you.
Thank you, Monta. Let's go Mercedes, then Liam, and then I'm going to propose a way forward, and we'll see if people will go along with me. Mercedes?
So I think we also need to make sure that we're focusing this in the right direction. This needs to be guidance for funders, right? So when funders sit in a room with a nonprofit organization and they say, we won't pay that much, we won't pay that much, we won't pay for that, we won't pay for that, that is what creates the compression on the other side for the organization, because they still need to get to the point where they have a healthy body of work. And when the funder doesn't want to pay for all of it, you simply go find another funder who can pay for a different part of it. And that's why you piece these things together. Almost no funder pays for 100% of anything. And that is part of the problem. It's difficult when also, it can't, this is again why it's important to make this guidance for funders, because we can say we're going to set a standard that if you're an SHS-funded contract, you can pay your case managers $25 to $30 an hour. But if my city contract says I can only pay 18, and my county contract says I can only pay 20, I can only pay 18, because by state law, I can't pay people who are doing the same work different wages just because they're lucky enough to be under the umbrella of a contract that would allow for it. So we have to keep that in mind with that flexibility and with who is making these decisions. We also need to talk about how contract negotiations happen. We do RFPs, right? So an organization submits their budget, this is how much it's gonna cost for me to do that work. And what happens if you are awarded that is you are not necessarily awarded that money. You are awarded an opportunity to sit down with a contractor who's gonna see how much of that they're willing to pay for. And that's when you get into situations where you don't have any money for a supervisor. You can pay for the staff, but you can't pay for the supervisor. Or do you really need that extra peer support person half-time? Why don't we just cut them out and you focus on the full-time staff, right? That's when you get into the situation of how much fringe and how much admin are you going to be allowed, and all of that creates wage compression. And when all of the funders are not playing by the same rule book, you have to meet the lowest common denominator, and that is what we have been doing for decades.
Yeah, that's a wrinkle in this conversation. Liam?
Mercedes, can you hear me? Yes, you're on. Oh, I am?
I can't tell, you sound like.
Am I on? Yeah, there I am. Mercedes, that was spectacular. I couldn't have written that any better myself. That was amazing. Just two quick things. One, from Metro's point of view, at the Oversight Committee, there's been a lot of deliberation around rollover and spend down, basically meaning it contains a lot of unanticipated revenue from the SHS fund as we stabilize over the years. And what I hear from people that worked on the campaign to pass this measure is, you know, why can't they get this money out? Why can't you get the money out? Well, the reason why you can't get the money out is that there's not enough staff out there. And that's why this is the major issue facing SHS right now. And if we want SHS to be a success, we have to tackle this. Separately, Christina, I know you're out there in virtual land. I want you to know that we hear you and we see you. And your input and comments are going to be included in our deliberations and our processes.
Thank you, Liam. So, best made plans, we add 100 things on an agenda that need real conversation like this. I'm gonna offer a potential approach forward and ask for some feedback, because there's a couple things. I don't know that we can land on a goal statement today based on this conversation. So I'm gonna put some things out and see where we get. I'm going to offer that it may, and Mike, I think you kicked off that conversation with a really important set of questions that I think led down this path of like, how do we, you know, it's either we're chewing off pieces of it and yet leaving a lot of other necessary interventions or investments on the table. I actually think that we may need to separate this into maybe three different pieces, right? There's a specific issue around wages, right, compensation, and I think that's complicated enough on itself. I also heard two other pieces. One is around recruitment and barriers to actually hiring folks. So Christina said used the example of requiring degrees or application processes or whatever that is, right? There's complexities there. And then I think there's actually another bucket around retention. And that gets to some of the mental health supports that I know this group has talked about. It gets to some of the full package of compensation that I think, Monta, you were talking about. You have healthcare, and you're able to keep people and sustain people. So I'm wondering, one, if folks would be okay saying for today, can we focus on a goal that's specific on wages, recognizing we have two other buckets that do not feel at this moment that they can just be put in? Because I think you asked the right question, right? Wages is certainly a part of this equation. And I think many folks use very, examples from having these conversations with providers, personal examples, right? Wages seem to be a really important piece, right? And I think, Steve, what you said, it's kind of unacceptable that we're not, paying people at a wage. And Commissioner, your comment about paying people at least at a livable wage. So first question, I guess, would folks be comfortable, or do you agree that we can separate these three kind of concepts, wages, recruitment, and retention, knowing that we don't have recommendation language for recruitment and retention, that will have to be work that we do. But for today, focusing in on wages. So let me open that up. Mercedes and Jess, you look like you're ready to say something too. Compensation, yes. So with that amendment, so one bucket being compensation, recruitment, retention. Jess? Were you gonna say something? You look like you're thinking about whether you want to say something.
I'm struggling to formulate, thank you for calling on me, Ben. I'm struggling to formulate my thought. I just want to, I guess, bring the committee back to what I understand to be our task at hand is to work towards regionalizing solutions to challenges each of the 3 counties are having. The work of implementing the supportive housing services measure and our homeless services systems of care is much larger than what is being discussed and is at this table and is much larger than all that we can take on. And so I guess I'm eager for us to hone in on opportunities to make solutions where we can have impact through regional coordination and regional capacity. And I'm concerned about adding more and more and more to the list. And so that's, I'm sorry, this isn't a fully formulated thought, but I think that is why staff prepared this list of recommendations, is coming from our experience in this work and where we have shared challenges that we see opportunity through regionalism. We have other shared challenges that we're solving locally, and so some of this can get solved and addressed through organizational support or the specific design of county contracts, and some of it can be addressed through regional alignment and strength. And I think that's what's giving me pause right now is by adding more to the plate, are we adding regional value? And I see there's the greatest regional value in focusing on equitable wages.
Yeah, and Commissioner, please.
You might be about to say what I was
No, I'd rather have it come from your mouth.
You know, I think what I understood you to be suggesting, Ben, is that we're going to focus on wages. We're going to put those other things in our long list of idea buckets over here. But wages are on this list of priorities.
I think that's accurate.
Yeah.
I mean, I think what we prioritize and why you saw it here, you know, building off the challenges, building off the prioritization and conversation, but recognizing that we're not solving the whole problem by only focusing on compensation. Right, and I think, you know, with your amendment, which I will call it that, Mercedes, and I think, Monta, you made this point as well, that ensuring kind of fair and equitable compensation is a really important piece. Mike, let's come back to you, full circle here.
I just, when it comes back to compensation, like listening to what everyone's saying, there were a lot of constraints that were in there that was gonna get compensation to where it needs to go, where Mercedes is saying with all the other contracts. I think those are the things as a region we can focus on to try to clear some of those things up where, because we can't have SHS all the way up here and then everyone else down here. So I don't know if it's a policy thing or what we need to do, and I don't know where the funding is going to come from for all of that, but it seems like those are the bottlenecks or the things that are keeping us from getting wages where they need to go. And
Before you go, because I think you were hitting on my other edit, because I think I heard that, even though I think, Steve, you made a real strong case for the idea that we have a bunch of money here and we should be paying people. Mercedes, you provided a really clear kind of contextual example of why that's so difficult to only focus on SHS funding. I guess if I was to say that the goal would be ensure fair and equitable compensation for service agencies and providers throughout the region, does that alleviate that it's not just SHS-funded programs, that it's compensation? Chair, you're having a reaction. Jump in.
We need to succeed with SHS, and we need to empower our teams to go work with this across the region. If we're going to solve the whole ecosystem for all funding sources, we won't get that done. And the folks that want to get legislation passed at the state legislature to yank this effort will succeed.
That's fair. I guess what I want to reflect back on what I heard from Mercedes is that if you just do it with SHS, it actually creates liabilities because of other funding sources that prevent that from happening. So Mercedes, could you clarify? And we might just not land on something today, and that's okay, because I think we're just uncovering that we need some more work here. But Mercedes, please.
Yeah, so I would say I think the goal needs to be to provide guidance for the funders in the region, which are the counties and metro, right? On how to partner with homeless response providers, right? And because there are also multiple contracts that have SHS funds and non-SHS funds for the same body of work, right? And so the guidance needs to be for how the funders, how the county departments who are putting money out are going to treat their partners. And if they're going to help their partners get to fair and equitable wages, that's the guidance that those contractors need to make that discussion happen. So my amendment would be that this would be about really turning internally around county processes and how they decide what they cut out of people's RFP responses, what they cut out of people's budgets when they ask them to submit them, what we cut in the budget session when we're deciding what we're going to fund and not fund, that we're thinking about how that impacts total compensation for services that we're trying to get funded by SHS.
Thank you. Let's go, Jess. And I'm actually going to suggest that we move to a different topic because I don't think we're going to land on a agreement on a goal today. It needs some more conversation, but this has been fascinating. And
I'll be quick,
Jess.
thank you. Just a point of clarity, actually in Washington County, all of our contracts right now are SHS funded and all of them come with pay equity. And what we're learning from our partners is that it's often contracts with Medicaid or other non-contract. So I would encourage us not to just look at this from a county funder perspective, but a whole perspective of what does it take to get equitable wages into the positions that are being funded through this program. Because I don't think it's just a county funder consideration.
Thank you. Are folks okay accepting that we have more conversation on this and that we are not at a position to adopt a set of goal language that we agree on? I mean, that was an important conversation. I think we kind of knew coming in that this was, glad that was empty. Liam?
I just wanted to point out that the focus of this conversation is in that one piece of the goal language that says SHS funded. I think what I've seen here is agreement that pay equity as a concept is a priority for this committee, and that's where we came to. Fair and equitable compensation. But I just want to point out the debate that I'm hearing right now is SHS funded only or homeless services housing funded. And that's the debate that I've seen here. And if anybody disagrees with that, then please. But that's what I'm seeing.
I think that's right. I think what I'm hearing is that there's consequences to only funding or only focusing on SHS that we need to have more debate and deliberation on. Is that fair? Right, that there's some consequences of just adopting this goal today that this group, I feel like, needs to talk about more. Everybody's being quiet. I see a thumbs up from Matt. Okay, well, we're gonna come back to this, so this gives us a lot to process and think through. I do wanna move us to coordinated entry, and it feels like a real rapid shift, but I do wanna be respectful of what we have in front of us. And that is Yesenia. And maybe this will be a little less complex, but who knows?
Yeah. Thanks. Thank you. Hi again, Yesenia here from Multnomah County. Thank you all for, voting on these priorities and for the thoughtful conversations and discussions that have already gone on. I'm gonna briefly kind of cover coordinated entry and just give a quick overview and then move on to our challenge, goal, and recommendations. So folks may or may not know this, but the intent of coordinated entry is to provide a streamlined and equitable access to housing interventions for people experiencing homelessness, regardless of where someone first seeks services. So the access is based on vulnerability, eligibility, and choice. So this is where some of y'all might have heard of the no wrong door policy, which very much gets at no matter where someone seeks services, they are going to be assessed and directed towards services in the same way. The other thing to keep in mind is that coordinated entry systems across the country have actually been developed in alignment with HUD, so the Housing and Urban Development, to meet their requirements. A little more about that is that in 2017, HUD published a notice establishing additional requirements for the continuums of care. And as you know, a lot of us we all have one in each county, regarding the development and implementation of coordinated entry, meaning that all programs funded with HUD funds will need to go through some version of a centralized or coordinated entry system. So I think that's just additional context that I wanted to share, because I think in whatever way we like move forward with this body of work, keeping in mind this HUD context feels important. So as you all can see here, the main challenge that the counties are facing is the path and level of access to coordinated entry is not consistent throughout the region. And then of course, there's a high demand for these housing services, which then creates additional wait times and barriers that folks are facing. So to mitigate these challenges, our proposed goal is to co-create coordinated entry to be more accessible and equitable and efficient for staff and clients. I know that, you might be wondering, well, what does this look like? So we have some recommendations here on the next slide to be able to cover them. So the first one is that there's an opportunity to really map out the unique challenges and successes of each of the 3 coordinated entry systems. So because, we all work with HUD differently, because we all understand that our communities are nuanced and might need different things, we all have coordinated entry systems, but they might look a little bit differently. And being able to check in with the other counties, and we actually already do a lot of this, we're consistently talking about how do we center racial equity in a standardized system that we know, systems like this don't typically work for people of color. So we're already having these conversations, but to be able to get additional capacity to help our teams in all 3 counties that work on coordinated entry, map out those opportunities and see where there's further alignment and support would be key. Another key component of this is, as we've discussed before, sometimes the counties and government, we see these boundary geographical lines and we're really set about them, but a lot of times the people that we serve aren't, right? And they move from county to county. So like exploring opportunities where there is some connectivity is crucial, which gets me to the next recommendation, which is assessing opportunities to create connectivity between the 3 coordinated entry systems to improve equitable access and work towards regionalizing some tools within coordinated entry. So there's already some great work happening, like I said, in each of the counties on revamping and redesigning coordinated entry, the tools that we use within it. But having that work and opportunities where it makes sense to regionalize that could be really supportive. An idea of this would be, for example, here in Multnomah County for the last couple of years, we've worked to revise our coordinated access process and a tool, the assessment tool, that we knew that the tool that we had historically used, we knew just wasn't meeting the needs of all the people that is in our community. So we wanted to make a more culturally responsive tool. And it's taken us quite some time because we are co-creating it with our community and getting feedback. But then being able to share what we've already learned throughout this process could then support our colleagues in the other counties. And again, we're only saying to like regionalize the things that make sense, because a lot of times we need to be like nimble and flexible and not have everything be standardized and in one way. And then finally, the final recommendation here is exploring opportunities for co-enrollment with other systems. As we all know, housing is just one component of a broader social service ecosystem that someone might need access to. So exploring co-enrollment with other systems, including healthcare, the Department of Human Services, is crucial to strategically align and work together to really best support the whole person and the needs that they might encounter. So I'll pause there and see what folks' initial thoughts and reactions are.
Thank you, Yesenia. Any clarifying questions to start with? Or was that an old tent or is that a new tent? Jump in, Chair.
No, you asked if there are clarifying questions, so I'm getting out of the way of that.
Anything
question.
else?
Okay, anything else?
Well, is clarifying question? Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. I think you said, well, I recall from the verbiage, the 3 systems. And the clarifying question I have is, to what extent is the goal, to have the same app that can be used by, within all 3 counties? Or is it just data sharing among the counties?
Folks on Zoom, could you hear Matt?
With difficulty, I think Matt's microphone is not on.
Let me try that again. The verbiage in the goal references the 3 systems, obviously per county, 1 per county. And my question is the goal to have 1 app that would connect to, that would serve all the service providers, whichever county they're in? Or are we going to still have 3 different systems that are maybe similar in data sharing, but they're not the same?
Yesenia?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think that there's room to further unpack that. I think initially what comes up is, for example, even in Multnomah County, we have 1 coordinated access system, but the way we screen folks who identify as domestic violence survivors is different than perhaps families. So I think that there's always an opportunity with working with people who have different needs to keep that nuance and be nimble in the way we screen folks and make sure that that's trauma informed, because what one person might need might be different. So I think that there's an opportunity to explore what one potential thing would look like, but I really do want to just caution us to hold the power of being nuanced with our different tools and systems to be able to support and be reflective of the different communities and populations that we serve.
Thank you. Yesenia, follow up, Matt?
Yeah, just real quick, because domestic violence has different laws that apply to disclosure of information, as is obviously appropriate. So what I would encourage then is that, I believe, being kind of a technology nerd, that we could achieve an app. And I would simply point out, and I apologize, I'm a little beyond the clarifying, but I think this is very fundamental. That would also make a big difference on training that we talked about earlier. So I think we need to clarify the goal. I obviously have a real strong bias as to whether we're aiming for 1 consistent app across the metro region, or are we aiming for multiple apps and such? So that's my question and concern.
Thank you, Matt. Chair? Or if anybody wants to respond, I think you've shared the concern. Is there any other response before we go? Oh, Vahid. Sorry, my old eyes don't work.
Yeah, I think I just wanted to respond a little bit to Matt's question. The way that the goal and the recommendations are phrased here we're not starting with the goal of a single app or a single regional system. So the first recommendation is really to dig into and map the unique challenges and strengths of each of our coordinated entry systems. And in that exercise, we might find that there are strengths to having local COC specific coordinated entry systems that have components or elements that are susceptible to regionalization in ways that benefit the whole region. It may be that through that exercise, we find that a regional coordinated entry system is where we all want to head, but we're not starting with that because we feel, the counties feel, staff feels that there's a need to first assess like why and how our coordinated entry systems were built the way that they were.
Yeah, thank you, Vahid. And again, I'm gonna, let's go Chair Harrington, and then, because today we're not gonna solve the kind of strategy, and so you've heard kind of the why behind why the recommendations are what they are, but let's try to stay away from the recommendations if we can. Chair, please.
Well, now I have a clarifying question.
Okay.
When the measure was put together, I thought it was being very successful in being client-focused or people-focused, choose your favorite word, so that if a person in need showed up for service in County A one day and then County B in another day, that the systems were sufficiently integrated so that each of the county, those case managers, whatever, the people way smarter than me, right? The subject matter experts could know what was happening for that individual in a different place. To me, early on, that sounded like a single coordinated care system. So I have found myself getting confused all along in different forums. Is that just a goal and we're working towards that goal? Or have we decided that there need to be 3 systems, but somehow there's access across? So let me start with that clarification first.
I mean, well, go on.
Thanks, Ben, and thanks, Chair. That's a phenomenal question, and I don't think your question just applies to this topic alone, actually. I think what we're trying to do here at the TCPB is not decide on the future goal in advance without doing that mapping first to understand what the challenges are on the ground. Let's do our due diligence, be thoughtful and intentional about it. The goal is to regionalize, but to regionalize the pieces that make sense for everybody, I think.
Yeah.
But I'm so glad you asked that question.
Well, this is why I didn't think I had a clarifying question, but rather just wanted to really sing the praises to staff. This is the 3rd goal, 3rd recommendation, where I think our staff experts are hitting it out of the park. They have told us very clearly what the challenges are. There were lots of them. We helped prioritize it. But everything that I've been hearing, they know what needs to be done. They've brought forward these goals and recommendations to get that regional support that Yesenia, you so aptly described, and that I'm grateful for. And I'm very anxious for us to be thumbs up on this. And because I'm a blunt person, I'm not known for grace. Let's give them the go-ahead, give them the resources they need, and get out of their way. Let them go do that work, and then come back to us in some number of months with the report out on that and the next set where they need the support. They've been in these trenches with the providers, with the individuals for over a year, and they know they've helped us understand where they could use some help with our regionalism.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yesenia, I see your hand up, and then I do want to maybe bring up the slide that has the goal, but let's hear from you, Yesenia.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to thank Chair Harrington for her comments. And I think the other piece to keep in mind, and that this is exactly why I brought up HUD as an important piece of context here, is that like in the previous goals, like there's other fundings at play that impact our coordinated entry systems. So I think that's why we wanted to create a goal that was broad enough that allows us to explore and unpack that while continuing to still keep in mind the additional funding sources that compose our coordinated entry systems that we need to make work with wherever we head here.
Yeah, that was a wonderful last thing to say, and thank you, Chair Harrington, for challenging us to look at this goal and seeing coordinated entry as more accessible, equitable, and efficient for staff and clients. So if you ignore well, you don't ignore the recommendations, but I'm not asking you to vote on how we make that happen. Do we agree that that is a goal that then we want to pursue through a deeper dive into the recommendations? Can I get a thumbs up that that goal is in language that's broad enough and flexible enough to give the starting point? Thank you, Christina.
Steve, did you give a thumb? Thank
Steve,
you.
thumbs up, okay. All right, okay, good. Congratulations. All right, well, we got a couple goals done. We have 10 minutes left. And I'm gonna make an assumption, and you know what they say about assumptions. So I'm gonna hope that y'all don't make that true. I'm gonna offer that we come back to the landlord recruitment, although there might be a little bit of conversation that we want to at least bring in the room. But I want to see if we can hit healthcare system alignment, because it feels really clear in terms of the goal language and background. So Liam, I'm gonna see if you can speed us through.
You know how fast I talk, Ben, yes. I think this is a good idea to switch these because I think this one, and I might get in trouble here, I think this one's a no-brainer. We had Cole Merkel from Here Together come and testify earlier. I'm not sure if Cole had read the meeting packet yet, but it was largely in line with what he suggested. We want to sit down and convene health care industry stakeholders to talk through our alignment, specifically with Measure 110, the Medicaid exemption. And so, Cole, I just want to reassure you that these aren't just good intentions, and we do plan to sit down together. So I'm hoping that you can all agree on this path forward. We'd like to get started on this, as you can tell by my enthusiasm. We're raring to go.
So looking at the goal, I mean, this is something I think we've heard pretty clearly as we've had these conversations. There's a variety of reasons why. Greater alignment and long-term partnerships with healthcare systems that meaningfully benefit people experiencing homelessness and the systems that serve them. Can I ask for questions or clarifications around that goal? Mercedes?
I'm just wondering if we're also thinking about that 25% in our SHS, the folks who are at risk. So not just folks who are experiencing homelessness, but folks who are at risk.
Liam?
Yes, it includes the total populations. That 25% has both those two populations within that category, but yes, to confirm.
Is that necessary to spell out, or is that an acceptable response? Fine for Mercedes. Okay. Any other questions, comments, thoughts on this alignment? It's basically figured out. Thumbs up if folks are good with the goal. That basically says, let's figure out how to align our systems and benefit people experiencing homelessness.
I think Soy has thumbs up. Ebony, thumbs up.
Let me ask, is there any thumbs down? Because I think our rules are majority. So is there any thumbs down?
I don't see any in the chat.
Not seeing any
Or the screen.
thumbs down. I love the end of meetings when we just fly through things. I know we have one more topic. We don't have time today to get into it, but I did want to, well,
I've got an idea.
You got an idea?
I got an idea.
We've been talking about landlord.
Okay,
coordination
let's
for a while.
dive in. Let's dive in. I mean, I would like to. All
Do we have
right.
it up?
Go
Okay.
for the fences, swing for the fences, Ben.
All right, let's do it.
All right,
Okay.
Chair. Thanks for giving us the
All
green
right.
light. Jess Lawson, I'm going to ask you for an assist on this one. We were both assigned. Oh, Jesse. Okay. Sorry, Jesse.
Okay.
It's me in Washington County. I'm hoping that you all got a chance to read the memo that we put together after doing some research, interviewing folks. We got quite excited, both by speaking to the organizations, one from LA and one from Seattle, and then also in speaking with county staff around the landlord liaison programs that they're getting up and running in each of their jurisdictions. In fact, I think today was the second meeting of the landlord liaison group, which is pretty cool. I also know that Multnomah County put out an RFPQ, I think, this week for master leasing. So there are a lot of pieces that are actually happening at a local level, a lot of pieces happening up and down the West Coast too that I think, as you noticed in the memo, could be applicable here too. If you take a look at the screen in front of you right here, we've laid out the challenge, and it's not, we haven't said landlord recruitment here because the actual challenge is for caseworkers to get the folks that they're working with into an available and accessible unit in real time as much as possible. So the goal here is to increase the availability of readily accessible and appropriate housing units for service providers. So Ben, I'm going to ask you here if you wanted to focus on the goals, but before you consider that, one point of order I wanted to make for everybody is that there have been a number of areas this afternoon that we've talked about doing more work on, mapping. And what we are going to propose here as a staff recommendation is to contract with a qualified consultant. I think Metro staff would like to expand that scope into some of these other areas too, including mapping, coordinated entry, and then potentially that first one around training and not compensation. We're going to return to compensation, but you understand what I'm saying. So I'm going to take a step back. Ben's going to lead it from here and in to talk about the goal, and then also to talk about that recommendation about contracting with a qualified consultant specifically for the landlord piece, and then also for your consideration in some of the other pieces too, including coordinated entry.
Christina?
I'm a little bit concerned about recruitment to happen. I don't know what is the timeline, but recruitment for landlords when there is no landlord's license protections is a big thing. A lot of I'm afraid, and maybe you guys have more information, but what I'm afraid of is many landlords, they step on tenants' rights, fair housing rights, poor housing conditions, et cetera, et cetera. So discrimination, you name it. So I'm not opposed to this. What I'm saying is, I think that when we're talking about landlord attract landlords, I don't know if there is a way to also including that there needs to be landlords education for basic tenant protections, or even more than that, like before accessing funding, we need to make sure that we're not just getting a bunch of landlords excited to get into this program because there is going to be money available, and then we put our community members into standard housing.
Wonderful.
Christina, that's a phenomenal point, and I know that at least a couple of the counties are already trying to institute new ways in which we can guarantee a positive relationship with landlords through some education. What we're talking about right now is the potential of regionalizing some of that, and that does include landlord education to ensure that folks aren't discriminated against and that fair housing requirements are observed. Thank you for raising that point, and we will absolutely include that in our development if the TCPB wants us to go ahead with a consultant.
So can we go back to goal for today? Oh, Matt, sorry, I didn't see your card.
Yeah, just real quick. One of the things with your consultant, which I think is a really, really good idea, but I would encourage you, in addition, I was going to also mention landlord training, but if the consultant can also work toward an RFP, because it's going to take a while for this to go. I think this is another area where there's a considerable amount of urgency. I kind of think it's a no-brainer. There are a couple of good candidates and there may be some others that would want to bid on it, but it would be terrific if we could get not just a report on what it is that is proposed and all of that, and what you've already produced is really good. There's a lot of cool insights in that. If we had more time, I would comment on them. But if it's in a context so that we could have a recommendation that would say, kind of, issue this RFP, because I think the RFP would have to come out of Metro. I think that will help us a lot in the timing in terms of trying to bring this in as soon as possible. So that's something I would encourage you to do as part of what the consultant would provide to you.
Thank you, Matt.
Commissioner.
Yeah, I thought I'm not sure where this fits in how you're structuring the conversation, but, I thought I'd add just a little bit more information as context. And really, I think it would have been included in the memo if this had happened earlier. So I'll just mention that Multnomah County, we are looking at moving forward with this strategy. And I think of the strategy as regionalization and also as centralization. In other words, one of the challenges, I thought the goal statement was really well said. One of the challenges is having individual providers needing to go out and do searches, recruitment. Some of them want to do it. Some of them have found it very difficult to do. So as part of Chair Vega Peterson's announcement last week around Housing Multnomah Now, one of the key components of that effort is really sort of amping up this accessibility of additional housing units. And so we are looking at we are talking to one of the providers that's mentioned in the memo, Housing Connector, about coming in and working with Multnomah County. I think, to Matt's question about where does the RFP sit and kind of where does that sit, it could sit at Metro. I think we could move forward with something like this with Multnomah County implementing it. We do the analysis from the Tri-County Planning Body as to whether regionalization is an additional component. And then if it is, it can be expanded. Hope that made sense.
Yeah, thank you for that additional context. So and Jesse, you have a hand up. Zoe first, and then Jesse, then Chair Harrington.
I'm sure you guys already thought about this, but I just wanted to hint when the map out of the landlord recruitment and stuff that what we're looking here, equitable, is to be inclusive and including our BIPOC community into the society. So landlords close to lines of transportation, close to business, close to where the good things are happening, and making sure that we're not repeating history and targeting landlords that are away and far away from when we want to see more of that.
That's great. Thank you, Zoe. Let's go Jesse and then Chair Harrington.
I know we're short on time. I'm sorry. I want to be really brief and just throw out kind of some of the things that are happening and highlight the second bullet, the regional communications campaign, because I know we do want to pull in, there are vacant units that are out there. So how do we let those landlords know what our program can offer them and make them feel more secure in coming and participating in the voucher system and renting to maybe some high barrier participants? So I've started to really talk with my landlord liaison in Washington County, who yes, did meet today with the other two counties. They've already started regionalizing this work, which is fantastic. And looking at it as wraparound services for landlords. And we need to get that message out there, right? Wraparound services for participants, and then also wraparound services to support the landlords that are renting to these participants. So things like repair funds for inspections, initial inspections that don't get passed, things like the risk mitigation program that is probably going to be signed this week, which is a beautiful first example, or not first, Arla is the first, but a beautiful next example of regionalizing some of this work already. So really getting that communications out there to let landlords know these things exist to support them. And even in the small outreach that we've already done, we have planned outreach to culturally specific landlords and kind of ramping up now that these things are more set and in place, the RMP in particular. But letting them know, we had our very first landlord call this week to our landlord liaison and say, I have a 2-unit, apartment. I want an Arla participant. Let's get me connected. It was awesome. That's exactly what we want to have happen. And I think it just shows that it's there and we need to get the word out why maybe some of this other work is happening.
Thank you. 6:03, I'll just put that in the air. Chair Harrington and then Commissioner.
think our staff has made the very strong case that they want and need regional support towards this goal, and I'm 100% on that. I appreciated the memo on the landlord recruitment and retention. As I was reading it, and then after the fact, I just want to acknowledge the comparison for each of those examples. We're all in one county versus our case where we're doing work across 3 units. Now, I'm just sharing that as an observation. Commissioner Jayapal gets beat up about City of Hillsborough and all kinds of things, and maybe she gets beat up occasionally about stuff going on in Washington County and Clackamas County, right? Similarly, you know, Chair Smith and I talk regularly. We each get battered on different things, and, you know, in my world, it's like we get battered if we're doing anything in cooperation with Portland and Multnomah County sometimes. But I want to share that SHS and the years of COVID have totally helped me lean into this, that this effort to ensuring that we are successful as a region and our 3 units of county government working well together with Metro on these needs. And this landlord work just speaks loudly to me about the strong case for this and where we're better off going together than we are individually. So thank you for all of the work that's gone into this examination. Really appreciate having the opportunity to weigh in positively.
Thank you. Commissioner?
Well, first, thank you, Chair Harrington, for that. I mean, I think that that's 150% echoed by your sister counties. Really appreciate that statement. And I think that, I forget who it was that spoke last about the communications campaign, but I think some of what we heard speaks to the actual ultimate necessity for regionalization, because we've got landlords that operate across county lines, and it is going to get very confusing for them if there are different programs in different counties. So I think we're in agreement that that's the long-term goal, and the question is, how do we get there?
Awesome. So can we pull up the goal language, and I'm going to ask for a thumbs up. So folks can look at that, which just seems, people have said no-brainer. But the goal, increase the availability of readily accessible and appropriate housing units for service providers. Can I get a thumbs up that that is a laudable goal that we want to continue moving forward? Any thumbs down? Not seeing any. Good job. So let me reflect back, because we're at 6:05, so I want to reflect back. Yeah, hurrah, hurrah, yes, we can celebrate. Let's celebrate in like 45 seconds. So I feel like there's a couple next steps for moving forward. One, that the goals that we adopted today and confirmed will give Metro the permission to begin that foundational work on the regional plan. So great job. I'm glad the conversations led in very particular places to that success. I think importantly, we will work behind the scenes to come back with a plan to navigate the conversation around what has been the banner of recruitment and retention. I think based on the conversation today, we have to come back with a plan for how we're going to navigate that conversation and get us to a goal statement and get us to some recommendations that can work. I'm going to propose, we haven't talked about this, but there's work that you all could do between meetings that is going to be incredibly helpful for our next conversation. I'm going to call it a kind of today was maybe the pre-discovery process. This will be a post-discovery process. I think we need to develop a structure where you all can give additional thoughts and reflections on those recommendations, questions, concerns on those. So when we come back, we can do the same process with less deliberation and dialogue around recommendations, because we'll have prepared, maybe made some amendments based on what we hear. So I'm actually going to ask, and we'll have to design a process for that, but I need you all to be able to go back and look at the recommendation language, because we didn't confirm those today, and give us any other feedback that's giving you heartburn. Chair?
Do you mean something like what we have in our heads in terms of desired outcomes and how 6 months from now we might be thinking of measuring success?
No, although, I mean, I think that would be helpful feedback. I think that I want you all to look, based on our last conversation, for folks to either ask questions or say, you know what, I'm 100% good with contracting with a qualified consultant. Let's just move forward. And so when we come back, we'll have an assessment that says, you know, it doesn't seem like anybody has a problem.
Why do we have to get into the how so much? Why, I mean, you did a great job of getting
Yeah.
us to focus on the goals and the recommendation. And we need to empower staff to go do the work. I mean, I feel like we've had them do enough due diligence that they can come back and say, yep, we heard you, this is what we're doing.
I think for some of these recommendations, that is absolutely true.
Oh, I was just gonna add, our
please.
plan was to send out a survey to just ask for reflections on these different topics, so that could support staff in the work that we're gonna do between
Hey, you won't hear from
refining.
me?
I'm sorry?
You won't hear from me.
That's okay. I mean, but
No.
that's fine. We will take, I mean, I guess my ask is that if you have a challenge, if you have a critique, if you have concerns with recommendations,
yeah.
we need to hear that between now and March.
Yeah,
If you're good with it, and like you said,
Got it.
Chair Harrington, if you're like, God bless these folks that have done that work, let them go do the work. But I feel like part of the role of this body is to make sure that we're not moving forward on things that people have serious concerns about.
Got it.
Or where there may be consequences that we haven't thought through that could actually be detrimental to the work. So again, if you're all good with it, we don't need to hear from you. If you have challenges.
We just
Liam
want
wants
to
hear
create a
from you.
space between now and then for folks, like, as you're reflecting on this discussion, to just send us those notes, because sometimes, you know, you need a few days to process, and so we just want to make sure that we're being as inclusive as we can
And there's
of
some
everyone.
recommendations that are complex, that aren't ready, from my sense hearing today's conversation, that are not ready to say, let's go do the work, figure it out.
And sometimes they're iterative.
That's
where,
true, too.
you know, for example, you do a mapping, you'll learn a bunch, and my experience, I mean, a lot of times, you know, it's an, oh, whatever. We gotta do this a little different because what did we just learn?
That's right, we're gonna keep learning. Commissioner?
Very quick request. Could you send, maybe you already did the slides, the challenges were interesting to me, and so I would just like to have that. as
Yeah,
I'm
we'll give you
thinking
all
about
the
it.
background work. So let me thank the county and Metro staff that did the work. Chair Harrington has said this in a number of ways, I think really eloquently, but great job. You've taken a lot of information, you've given your time, energy, and wisdom to try to craft a vision for us. And I appreciate all of you who have come and brought forward ideas and critiques and challenges and opportunities to inform this process. But we got through a ton today. We're over time. Much love. Good luck out there. Feel better for those that are sick. But thank you. We'll see you next time.
Yeah, get healthy.
Thanks, everyone.
Recording stopped.
That was good. We're moving.
Yeah. So here's a news flash. You probably will hear from me.
Yeah. Matt, I'm already waiting for the 5 paragraphs.
Oh, hell yes.
Good job. Thanks, Mark.
That's well done.
Thanks for sticking around. Thanks for
So my only, I got everything, my only hiccup still having